We're going to try an experiment. This is a way of looking at one of the things that teaching artists do, which is try to bring people inside the work of art in a performance setting. So I'm going to do a little performance here for you, and I'm going to do it 4 times with a different preparation before it each time. And I want you to think about what kind of experience you had inside the artwork in relation to the preparation that you had. So we'll do it 4 times. You may want to pause this briefly to actually write down notes about your experience each time so that you can have it down and be able to compare the difference in your experiences rather than trying to remember it. For one reason, we tend to forget pretty quickly what our experiences are. And number 2, there's a history that we tend to revise our experiences in relation to other experiences. So you might want to pause this after each performance and write quick notes about what actually happened in there. And do tell the truth. This isn't, write down nice notes to the actor. This is write down, I made a grocery list, I'm noticing my feet itch, whatever it is, what really happened. So here comes our experiment. And for the first performance, I'm going to give you standard operating procedure, which is no preparation, just the work of art itself. And afterwards, remember, you may want to pause and write down some notes on what actually happened inside you during it. The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Thank you. Write down your notes. Okay. Here comes version number 2. And you're going to listen to my preparation, take in the poem, and then maybe write some quick notes about how your experience in the poem went this time. Here we go. In a moment, I'm going to speak the poem The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams, one of the most famous poems of the 20th century. Williams was born in New Jersey in 1883, went to high school where he started writing poetry, and then to the University of Pennsylvania where he was becoming a major in medicine to become a doctor, but writing poems at the same time. And he couldn't decide whether to become a poet or a doctor. His parents encouraged him to become a doctor. He decided to become both. He became a student of Ezra Pound, who was a great help to him in his early career, and Williams joined the Imagist school of poets, which also included T.S. Eliot. After some years, he separated from the Imagists because he found their work was becoming too European, and he was interested in a more American idiom. He fell out of the public eye for some number of years, but came back into popularity in the late 1950s because he was a strong mentor for the Beat poets, in particular Allen Ginsberg, who brought him back into public favor. He continued writing poems until his death in 1963. The Red Wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Your notes? Okay, we're back for a third try. And on this one, I'm going to do a different preparation. And here we go. In a moment, I'm going to speak the poem The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. And it's important to note that it is actually one sentence broken up into different intervals, and it's fair to say that so much depends upon each line of the poem. This is because the form of the poem is also its meaning. And the end of the poem, the image of a wheelbarrow, is also a part of the actual poem, almost as in a still life painting, when an apple represents an apple in real life, but is seen as an image in a painting. Similarly, the word wheelbarrow is seen as an image in a poem, but refers to an actual wheelbarrow at a farm. Notice how the monosyllabic lines in words in the third line elongate the line, putting an unusual pause between wheel and barrow, and this has the effect of breaking the image down into its most basic parts. Using the sentence as a painter uses line and color, Williams breaks up the words in order to see the object more closely. The word glazed evokes another painterly image. Just as the reader is beginning to notice the wheelbarrow through this closer perspective, the rain transforms it as well, giving it a newer, fresher look. And then the last lines offer up the final brushstroke in this still life poem, as the color white is used in stark contrast to the earlier red, and we complete our unusual view of the ordinary wheelbarrow. The red wheelbarrow. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens. Notes. And here we are for our fourth, you will be glad to hear, last part of our experiment. I'm going to do a different preparation and then speak the poem again and notice if there's any difference in your experience of the poem. Not long ago, I came across the incident that happened in William's life that prompted him to write the poem, The Red Wheelbarrow. He was a pediatrician back in the days when they made house calls, and he had this one patient, a young girl who was seriously ill and had been lying in bed for weeks, teetering on the brink of life and death. They weren't sure if she was going to make it or not. And she lay in this bed all day, every day in this New Jersey farmhouse. And one day after he'd examined her, he sat down and thought about, what is her life like? What are her days like? And he looked down the length of her bed to the window she looked out of all day, every day. And out of it on this rainy afternoon, he saw a wheelbarrow getting wet and some white chickens. And he went home and he wrote, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Maybe some notes? Okay, let me just assume some ideas about your experience to point out what I hoped would happen with this experiment. In the first, some people probably have a pretty good experience of that poem if they're already in the art club and they know how to make quick connections to new information, even if they don't know if it's long or short. But many people, it goes by so fast, they're not able to orient to it, and the thing is done and they don't feel like they succeeded. They feel unsuccessful in making a personally relevant connection even though they tried. Or if they can't get into the poem, they're trying anyway and they're noticing some stuff. You know, they're sort of noticing my tie or my voice or the way I put thoughts together or the color of my hair. They're kind of noticing stuff, but they're not able to perform the act of consequence, which is making a personally relevant connection inside the artwork. That second hearing, when I gave you a biography of the poet, that's standard operating procedure in the music world, both in programs we give to our attendees, or often even when we speak before a performance. We think, well, I'll tell them something about the composer, and that'll really help them into the piece. Well, you probably noticed that the biography of William Carlos Williams didn't help you at all to have a personally relevant experience of that poem. In fact, it might have annoyed you. It might have felt irrelevant. You may have tuned out. Who knows what you did? But the thing it probably didn't do was provide a helpful hand to bring you inside the world of that particular artwork. And that's standard operating procedure in the arts. The third experiment, I gave you that mini lecture, which may have had a very academic feel. It may have annoyed you and brought back memories of college when you were lectured at. But what it does artistically is says, you should look at the artwork like this. This is how a smart person looks at this artwork. You should look at it this way. And either you get irritated or you try really hard to get something out of it, but it completely squelches the possibility that you're going to be able to make your own personally relevant connection. And then in that fourth experiment, I tried to use what teaching artists do, and I'm not saying this is the tool you always use, because the tool is dependent on the particular artwork, but in this case, my hunch was, if I could bring you into a sense of that frame that she was looking out of, and as a teaching artist, that's the only gesture I used to really emphasize it, that without telling you what depends on a wheelbarrow, you would be engaged enough that you would start answering in a way that matters to you, so that your energy would participate, active listening. As Marshall McLuhan says, a hot medium, because your imagination has been engaged. And if the magic went well, you start to feel something. You start to feel you belong in that work of art. You start to get a sense of what depends, and it's something important. So even though that example wouldn't apply to other works of art, it's the way a teaching artist thinks. What can I do to bring that viewer inside this work of art on just a single hearing?